interested in finding out where environmental assessment came from. We now have a large industry, large network of sort of environmental assessment consultants across the country and around the world. We didn't have this in the 1950s and 1960s. So what happened? Where did we get the environmental assessment process?
In large part, we can thank our neighbors to the south. I mean, the United States was the first country to create an environmental assessment process, and they established the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, in 1969, 1970. And that was really the catalyst for environmental assessment across the globe. So, you know, every country you look to today, they have an environmental assessment system that shares some of the characteristics of that early NEPA. Here in Canada, we started on the environmental assessment scene in the early 70s, so we were next following the US. We didn't have a legislative process. It was more of a policy approach where we could do an environmental assessment for issues where there was some federal decision-making responsibility. Looking back in history, we often look to the Berger inquiry as sort of that high watermark in environmental assessment, even though technically speaking it wasn't an environmental assessment, but it looked and felt like an environmental assessment. And the level of engagement in Berger is, I think it's sort of come full circle where, since that Berger pipeline inquiry for the Mackenzie pipeline in the 70s, where we see broad scale engagement and consultation across the north, over the years it's dwindled a little, and now we're seeing a resurgence in recognition of the importance and value of that level and scale of application.
So put on your long-range forecasting view. 25 years from now, what do we have in the way of environmental assessment in Canada? The Indigenous communities are very strongly of the mind that this is part of their free, prior, and informed consent, that it is part of their right to veto resource projects. What's your view on where EA is going?
Wow, I wish I had a crystal ball to look into that one. It's really difficult to say where it's going. Right now, I mean, our federal environmental assessment process is being reviewed. It's under a public review process, and some changes are pending. How substantive they will be, I mean, nobody really knows. I mean, there was a commitment in the Liberal government's election platform to make environmental assessment credible again. Not exactly sure what that means, but we will certainly see some changes coming down the pipe. Now, in my view, looking forward, I would really like to see the emergence of more Aboriginal-led environmental assessment systems. Right now we have federal and provincial, territorial in the north under co-management bodies, but I would certainly like to see some capacity building and development around Aboriginal-led EA for projects that are on Aboriginal territory.
Excellent.